Jimmy Butler's time running short with the Miami Heat, and where could he go next? I'm Trevor Lane for the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications as well, and don't forget to like this video. So, Jimmy Butler has made it known that he likes the Brooklyn Nets, and Butler could be a free agent next summer. Take a look at the Miami Heat cap situation. You've got $49-ish million coming this season, almost $49 million for Jimmy Butler coming this season, but he does have a player option for next season at $52.4 million. Now, Butler has all summer been trying to work out an extension. He is eligible for an extension, wants a max extension with the Miami Heat, but does Miami even want to extend Jimmy Butler, and do they even want to extend him at a max number? And if that answer is no, which led to some rumors that he may wind up going to the 76ers before the Paul George signing went down. But if that answer is no from Miami, then we could see Jimmy Butler rocking a different jersey very, very soon. And let's not forget this little tidbit here from Pat Riley. Pat Riley said about an extension for Jimmy Butler, that's a big decision on our part to commit those kinds of resources unless you have somebody who's going to be there and available every single night. That's the truth. Pat Riley also mentioned that they don't really have to do an extension until next summer if they don't want. Well, that may be true, Pat, but again, Jimmy Butler can also become a free agent next summer. So if this doesn't look like he is going to stick long term, it doesn't look like Miami is going to give him the deal that he wants, then could we see Jimmy Butler actually on the trade market this year by the trade deadline? I think the Miami Heat actually have to look at him as though he is an expiring contract this year, despite the fact that he's got that player option. If they don't want to give him a big deal for 35-year-old Jimmy Butler, and they're concerned about how many games he plays, which frankly they probably should be. Look at Jimmy Butler's history here in Miami. 58 games, 52 games, 57 games, 64 games, 60 games, and he turns 35 in a week and a half. He's not getting any younger. He's been phenomenal for the Miami Heat. 21 points, 5.3 boards, 5 assists for Miami this last season. There's no question he's a great player, but at some point, he's going to go over that age cliff. He's not quite going to be the guy that he was, and if he's only playing 60 or so games per season, that may not be enough, despite how much Jimmy Butler embodies Heat culture, despite how important he's been to this team, despite the way that he steps it up in the postseason. At some point, Miami's going to look at Jimmy Butler and say, at this stage, it's just not worth it. And if we're there right now, we could very well see Jimmy Butler on that trade market by the trade deadline, or perhaps going elsewhere next summer. So let's say it's the latter option. Let's say Miami rides out the season with Jimmy Butler. Where could he land? He mentioned the Brooklyn Nets. I don't know if I really buy it. I think Jimmy Butler was just mentioning whatever team he thinks has plenty of cap space next summer as a way to scare Miami. Say, hey, I kind of like Brooklyn a lot, so Miami, you guys had better give me an extension. Otherwise, I could just be walking away in free agency next summer. I think he's trying to apply a little bit of pressure here because, frankly, he makes no sense for the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn should not be interested in Jimmy Butler at all. Brooklyn made a phenomenal decision, I think, to trade away Mikal Bridges. Yes, they had to send him to the Knicks, but they got a great deal for him. Now there's a future for this franchise. They are building for the future, and finally they have a direction in Brooklyn. Nets fans should be thrilled with the way their offseason went, even though it means taking a step back temporarily. But this is not the kind of team that should be interested in a 35-year-old Jimmy Butler. No way. But who else has cap space? The New Orleans Pelicans could potentially have some cap space. We'll see what happens with some of their deals. What do they wind up doing with Brandon Ingram? Could they bring in Jimmy Butler on the wing? They also have several other young wings. I don't know if it's a great fit, but maybe an option. Houston, actually pretty interesting, right? Houston's added some more veteran style guys in Fred VanVleet, and then you've got of course, Dylan Brooks came in as well, the villain himself. And Houston is a team that's poised to take the next step. Could Jimmy Butler be the kind of guy that comes in and brings more culture along with Ime Udoka, who's that head coach, brought in a very defense-first mindset? I think he'd actually fit fairly well there. Doesn't necessarily fit the timeline because Houston is still a young team, but the Rockets, they've been looking to try to make that next step. They're going to have plenty of cap space available. Yes, they've got to figure out some things with some of their own guys, maybe they could be an option in free agency. Look, Washington doesn't make any sense, I don't think. San Antonio, I mean, Wemby, if you decide, hey, let's give Wemby a 2-year window to make a push right now while we kind of build the young guys up around him so that Wemby doesn't get frustrated that the rest of the other young players aren't quite on his level. Maybe I could see it, but even that is a bit of a stretch. Detroit, no, probably not happening. Charlotte, probably not happening. So other landing spots for Jimmy Butler become difficult to find in free agency. But again, for Jimmy Butler's sake, it really only takes one. He needs one team out there to be a threat to grab him in free agency next summer in order to potentially get the Miami Heat to fork over that extension that he's looking for. Remember, that's really what this is about, more so than Jimmy Butler leaving Miami. But I do believe if push comes to shove and Miami says, we don't want to be in the Jimmy Butler business anymore, then he very well could find himself on his way out. So could the Heat trade him somewhere this season? Yeah, I think they absolutely could trade him this season if they decide we don't want to be the team to give a 35-year-old Jimmy Butler his next big contract. Again, he has that player option of $52.4 million. You would have to find a team that was, number one, willing and able to take on Jimmy Butler at almost $49 million for this season, but also willing probably to give Jimmy the extension that he wants on his next deal, or at the very least would be okay with Jimmy Butler picking up the player option on his deal at $52.4 million. So when we think about teams like that, think about teams that need to take that next step, that are looking for a veteran presence. The Sacramento Kings come to mind, but they already made their move. They went and they got DeMar DeRozan. Some other clubs that could potentially have interest and would make some sense. You look at the Clippers, who just lost Paul George. Could they stack up some salaries? They've got guys. You've got PJ Tucker. Might he be an interesting guy to start to build a deal around? He's only $11 million, but it's an expiring contract. Then you've got a guy like Norman Powell, $20 million. Boom, you start stacking up these salaries in order to go get something done and make something happen. You add Norman Powell, you add PJ Tucker. Maybe you can find another couple of contracts in here to go with. You're not going to trade Zubac. You just signed him to an extension. They got that done. But I think the Clippers have the salaries that they could put together. They could find ways to stack up enough pieces to go get Jimmy Butler and say, Kawhi, we lost Paul George, but here's Jimmy, and let's go. Make a run with the final 3 years that you've got remaining on your deal, and let's have you and Jimmy Butler, and we'll try to make a real run at this thing. I think they would be an interesting fit. Another team that could make some sense is the Golden State Warriors. They just did an extension with Steph Curry. They're trying to maximize his window for 3 more seasons. Lines up with Draymond Green, lines up with Andrew Wiggins, but would Jimmy Butler be an upgrade over Andrew Wiggins? Yeah, I think so. If you're trying to sell the Steph that, look, we're going to do everything we can to help you win right now, you've got some salaries that you can stack up here. Andrew Wiggins, DeAnthony Melton, he'll be trade eligible in December. Gary Payton II, that's another expiring, a lot of expiring deals that you could throw to Miami so they're not tying up future cap space to get them into a post-Jimmy Butler era. Now, I think they would probably want Jonathan Kuminga. The Miami Heat would. I don't know if the Warriors would give him up for an aging Jimmy Butler, but nonetheless, you've got Jonathan Kuminga, who's going to need a new contract soon. Kevon Looney is an $8 million expiring contract. The Warriors have not just the motivation to do it, but they've got the salaries that you can stack up to get there. When you go and you look at my Lakers, could they make something like that happen to go land Jimmy Butler? Well, you've got salaries you can stack up here in D'Angelo Russell and Rui Hachimura. Of course, Miami would probably want Austin Reeves. The Lakers, I believe that would be a no-go for them. But you stack up D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura, and Gabe Vincent, my former Miami Heat player, Gabe Vincent, and off you go. You could get right there and perhaps swing a deal for Jimmy Butler. And then you're selling LeBron James on, hey, we went and we added a piece to help you win right now. We got you, Jimmy. Miami obviously has to get some assets in the deal. They'd have to get some type of future capital, maybe a young player or two, something like that. But you've got some salaries that you could stack up, as well as that motivation to go try to make something happen from the Lakers side of things. Pair Jimmy with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and then you let the chips fall where they may after the LeBron era comes to an end, which we believe is probably in the next few seasons. Another team to take a look at that I think is interesting, it is the Memphis Grizzlies. This is a club that I think is going to bounce back this season in a big, big way. They do have some movable contracts. What if they decide, you know what, Marcus Smart, with Ja, it's just not the right fit. You could build a deal around his $20 million salary. You've got some other players that you could throw in here, perhaps make something work a little bit more difficult. You probably need one more decent sized deal to throw in to try to make something happen. But you can get there if you're Memphis and you feel like, hey, we really have a shot. Let's go. Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jimmy Butler on the wing, as well as Jaren Jackson Jr. And then we've got Zach Edey now, who we picked up in the draft, in the paint. Off we go. That could be a pretty good, pretty tough, pretty grit and grind, appropriate for the Grizzlies kind of group. Let's take a look at one Eastern Conference team that I think could make some sense going for a guy like Jimmy Butler. It's the Cleveland Cavaliers. They need to take another step forward. Yes, they added Max Strus, former Heat player. They've got guys like Karis LeVert. They have salaries that they could stack up. But I look at Cleveland, I think this is a team that is still one piece away at least. Jimmy Butler, again, brings you that edge, and maybe he's an interesting addition on the wing if you do decide you're going to move on from a Karis LeVert. You may also have Isaac Okoro if you can bring him back on a new deal. Right now, he's a restricted free agent, but we'll see ultimately where they land with him. Now, that said, the Cavs are going to get pretty expensive starting next season, so maybe they wouldn't want Jimmy Butler potentially opting into a $52 million second year there. Philly, they made their move, so I don't see them going after him. Knicks made their move, so I don't think they're going to go after him. The Indiana Pacers, kind of interesting, but they're such a young team. I don't think they really fit the timeline there. So not a ton of obvious options in the Eastern Conference that would make a lot of sense for both parties involved. I mean, the Orlando Magic are a team on the rise. Again, they're young. I don't think they're going to want to disrupt their timeline or anything, especially because they need to bring in shooters, but they did just add Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who is a veteran player who can help them out if they really decide, you know what, we just need one piece and Jimmy's that piece. Could Jimmy just make the move from Miami, head up north, go to Orlando? Maybe. But again, I think that one is fairly far-fetched. The bottom line, Jimmy Butler letting it out there that he's interested in Brooklyn. The comments that we've heard all summer from the Miami Heat, from Jimmy Butler, kind of flirting with the Philadelphia 76ers, it does feel like there's something to the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler, this relationship eventually ending if Jimmy doesn't get the kind of contract that he wants. And frankly, given the situation, the games played for Jimmy and the age, I kind of think Miami might get ready to turn the page either next summer or perhaps even this season by the trade deadline. Do we wind up with the trade deadline of Jimmy Butler this coming season? We'll see how this relationship progresses throughout the season. But everybody, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Where should Jimmy Butler wind up if he decides to leave the Miami Heat? Don't forget to check out our recent videos on Rob Pelinka and the Lakers and what he's thinking for this team moving forward. Lots of stuff going on there. Make sure you do subscribe to the channel. And again, like this video. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.